Hey everyone, Ryan Young, Kama Jiu-Jitsu. Hope you're doing well. So I'm just kind of sitting, today's a Sunday. Master Dave had just left, dropped him off to the airport. And on the way to the airport, a discussion came up with my wife. My wife was asking about belts and all that. And, had we figured something out with how do we belt, you know, older people, people that are really young, like kids and women, can they earn black belts, frail people, all that kind of stuff. And I was telling her, I go, this is a conversation that Dave and I have been having for years now. And it's still not really resolved. And Dave was saying, yeah, even with Hickson, as far as he knows, it hasn't quite really been resolved. But Hickson would give belts out. And because Elio Gracie, from what I understand, his policy was that a woman, like a family member of his, like a daughter of his or niece or whatever, the highest a woman could earn was a purple belt. And I think because if you look at the absolute number, your secret formula of jiu-jitsu, right? Your physicality plus your technicality equals your game. The game for a woman, for the average woman, is maybe here, whereas the game for an average man is up here. So I think what he did was he probably measured against the average man. So the average man earns black belt, but this is the average. This is the game, whereas women can pretty much not get there. And so as a result, they would have purple belts. So they're on the same scale as the men, which I think on the one hand is actually the correct way to think of it. What we do though is that we create different scales. So you have a scale for old people, a scale for kids, a scale for women, a scale for men. And when you do that though, they're all wearing the same belt. Right? It's not as if a purple belt that women wear is different from a purple belt that men wear. It's still the same purple belt. So a lot of people, I think they have the impression that a black belt means absolute ability, right? Your game, right? And it's a kind of a difficult thing because if you look at certain things, in certain things, they'll change the criteria for women, as an example, because something that may be dominated by men, right? Men do, so traditionally men were firemen or policemen, so they have to have a basic physical fitness level. So what they do is to diversify it out, they'll bring in women, but the women can't pass the exam, the physical fitness exam. So instead of maybe 25 push-ups, they may change it to 15 push-ups. Instead of being able to, squat 150 pounds, they change it to 100 pounds. So if you look on a different scale, then of course the female passes. And the female is, just as much a cop or just as much a fireman as the male is. But Elio Gracie didn't do that for the women with regard to their belts, which is why they had purple belts. But I know Hickson's wife at the time, she was a brown belt. I don't know if she ever got to her black belt. But, today there are women that are black belts. But just like with sports, you need to have different categories for men and for women. You cannot have women compete in the men's division. Just like you can't have men competing in the ladies division, which is why today the big old, argument that you have these women that are actually men competing in women's sports, and they're dominating, right? They're setting records, and of course, it's because it's a guy. You can't have the same type of measurement with women as you do with guys. Now with guys, but with jiu-jitsu now, what do we do? And because it came up because there was an older gentleman who used to be a member of Kama Jiu-Jitsu, and he's in his 60s, and came and was diligent about his training. So Dave gave him a blue belt, because he wanted to give him some encouragement and let him know that, yes, you are progressing. You are no longer a white belt, so here's your blue belt. Goes and competes, wins a tournament, went up against one guy like 2 or 3 times. Won by points, no submission, but won and was crowned world champion, right? Because, the world champion they have, that's another thing, an issue that I have with the world championships is that you have world champion for every belt level, you have world champion for every age level, world champion for every weight class, and every gender. Well, not every, just the 2 genders, right? So you have women, blue belt, 135 pounds, world champion. Oh, and that you have to be, you could be adult, which is under 30, and you got 30, 35, 44, I don't know how. But this guy, 60 years old. So, there were only 2 competitors, and he won like 2-0 or 4-2 or whatever it was. So he won, gold medal, good. Next year, competes again, goes up against the same guy, and this time he loses. But he didn't get submitted. He didn't get beat by points. He got beat by referee decision, and y'all know how I feel about that. So 0-0, and referee decides the other guy won it this year. So guys up on the podium, the other competitor he went up against, guys up on the podium, guy gets his purple belt on the podium. Well, of course, now you're going to have our guy thinking, where's my purple belt? So he has that conversation with Dave. And it wasn't, I guess, I don't know if it was, it was Dave's student, Irvine. It wasn't my student, but the conversation kind of went to the gist of, I'd like to at some point earn my black belt. Well, forget about purple belt, but black belt. So Dave asks him, okay, well, do you want it or do you want to earn it? Because if you just want it, I can give it to you now. He goes, but you're not going to be a real black belt. And suffice to say, that gentleman ended up leaving the school because I guess he didn't get the answer he wanted. I guess he wanted to see himself on a progressive path to black belt. And he had asked, he goes, do you have another, do you have an exception for old guys? And we don't. It's really hard. I mean, because how do we do that? Because there's always a relativity. You're going to give one belt versus to another person. You have to kind of have a justification for being able to do it. So if you have a guy who's 60 who can't even do everything that's required in the white belt curriculum, but he's now a black belt, but he's been dedicated training for 10 years. How does that make the guy who's 30 feeling about being only a blue belt when he just outmaneuvers this black belt every single time they train, right? And you say, well, he's old. Well, so because he's old, he gets it? I don't know, right? If you look at things, I'll give you an example. So think of when you're taking a math class. If you take a math class and you have to go, in order to pass the class, you got to go through all 10 chapters in the book. And you, for whatever reason, cannot seem to get past chapter 5. Does that mean that you should get credit for the entire class? Should you get the grade at the end of the semester, or should you get a 50%? I would contend you get 50%. But they say, okay, well, I'm not 20 years old like a typical college student. I'm 52 years old, so, I'm older. So my brain's not quite as fast. It doesn't fire quite as well as a 20-year-old or 22-year-old. So could I get some old man credit for that, right? The professor would presumably say no. I mean, you have to pass the exam for chapter 10 in order to pass the class. So now if you just kind of draw it back to Jiu-Jitsu, we don't have 10 chapters, but you have the white, blue, purple, brown, black. So you have to pass through 5 chapters to be able to wear a black belt. So you can pass chapter 1, get you to blue, and then you can't seem to pass chapter 2, which is your blue to purple. What do you do? But you've been training now for, let's say you got your blue belt 2 years into it, but now it's 8 years after that. So you've been training 10 years. I've heard instructors say, well, he's been training at least 10 years and he's not going to go anywhere. He's still going to be not going anywhere as far as not going to another school, whatever, but it's still training. Gets his ass kicked all the time, but I'll just give him the black belt anyway. And you can do that, but is the black belt really a black belt? I don't know. If he trains with another black belt, will he have any confidence of being able to beat him? Well, chances are no. Unless he's an extraordinary athlete. That's the one thing Dave said. If you have in his examples, a 95-year-old. The guy's 95 years old, he's an extraordinary athlete, and he's just like somebody who's 35 or 45, then he'd be a 95-year-old black belt. He'd be the only one in the world who earned it at 95 versus having it at age 20 and having it for 75 years. So the problem, I think, has to do with a lot of people. They see the black belt as something they can achieve, but really a black belt is not something that everybody can achieve. Everybody wants to achieve it. I'd like to be able to slam dunk a basketball, but I'll never be able to achieve that. And in my best day, I'd never be able to do it. I'd like to be admitted into Mensa, right? But I'm not smart enough to. So, and I never will be able to, no matter how much I study and try. A lot of concepts will just zing right by me. So But then again, if I try hard enough, I should be able to do it, right? Maybe, maybe not. We do have limitations, and those limitations can be genetics, it can be intelligence, it can be age, it could be height, it could be weight, it could be whatever, any kind of factor. So, it's like if I want to be in the NBA, I should be able to. Well, no, I mean, that's really just for them. The people who can do that are in the NBA. Think of the NBA as a black belt, right? But I'd be happy just to kind of play recreationally. Right? It doesn't start just because you can't be NBA level doesn't mean you can't play basketball. You can play, up to whatever level you can get up to, and then that's as high as you go. But you can continue still training in it, right? And that's what I contend to. Just because, let's say, you only get to purple belt, don't feel bad about not being able to get to black belt. Just be happy that you got to purple belt and continue to train. Now, things may happen. You may all of a sudden, after training for 10 years, realize, oh, you know what? My body knows how to do that certain arm bar, or knows how to do that certain type of heel hook or whatever that I couldn't do up until now. Well, then guess what? You're going to progress. But too many people put the time element on awarding the belts. And when you do that, you tend to gray the waters of what actually is a certain belt. There's no time factor at all. I mean, there really shouldn't be. It should be achievement. Did you achieve this? Did you achieve that? And not make it, unfortunately for the martial arts, a lot of people make it as kind of a feel-good thing, right? But that's, when you do that, you end up ruining the martial art to a lot of extent, right? Where you have these schools that are all about, making kids be better people and all that. And, and that's what somebody would ask me. Somebody came in the other week and asked me, I want my son to be disciplined. So I said, okay, I get what you're saying, but discipline starts at home. If there's no discipline work going on at home, there's nothing that I can do in the studio to make them disciplined if they're undisciplined, right? It's a habit. It has to be done every day at home, right? A simple habit is simply not acknowledging the word can't exists in your vocabulary, right? Because whatever you can and can't do, you're exactly right. So easy to say, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. There's a difference between I can and I will, right? But then again, I know I cannot. It's physically impossible for me to slam dunk a basketball, like I just said. So I guess in that way I can't, but I don't even think about it. It's not even something that I even worry about. I understand what I can do, what my realm of physical possibilities are, and from there, I say, okay, of those things that I can possibly do, what do I want to do, and what will I do? Daughter's laughing over there. Come say hi. That's my daughter Logan. She look right over here. Hi. She also trains too, right? 15-year-old green belt. And my hope is my daughter becomes a black belt, but you never know, right? You don't know what will happen in life. So for jiu-jitsu, so does that mean that a woman can't be a black belt? We've talked about this, and in my opinion, a woman can be a black belt. Now, it might be a harder road to travel on for a woman to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, being that jiu-jitsu's, because of the physicality, it's dominated by men. Right now, like with women firemen, policemen, they are firemen and policemen, but they do have a lower physical ability. Right? One woman pointed out to me, in a big debate about, not to me, but I just heard it, and she was saying, here I am, I'm a woman, and do I want women to be firefighters? Of course I do. But I realize that their qualification tests are different. So they don't have to be able to carry and lift and move the kind of weight that a man is required to. So me being a woman, and if I'm in a fire and I'm being saved by a firefighter, I'm happy to be saved by either the male or the female firefighter. But at the end of the day, a male firefighter can typically pick me up and walk me down the stairs, carry me and walk me down the stairs, but a woman may not be able to pick me up because I might be too heavy for her, but she just has to basically drag me down the stairs. Good thing. So what would I rather have? Would I rather have, being carried down, or would I rather be dragged down? Which was her question to it, right? So yes, she's saying I'm not against firefighters, but women being firefighters, but I have to accept the reality that it's going to be a different thing. And I'm sure a lot of fire battalions or whatever organization they have to think about, a certain assignment that somebody goes on, they can send the women, but there's going to have to be a man to back her up, so to speak, right? You're not going to send an all-female battalion to do a lot of labor work, because it just won't be done as quickly, right? Whereas you get the men, the strongest men, boom, they get it done, they come out, and they come out safely. Whereas what those men could do in 2 minutes, the women might have to do in 5 or 7 minutes. But in a fire, that could mean the difference between a lot of lives and a lot of deaths. So now, with regard to Jiu-Jitsu, your school, every school is different. So this is a conversation that each school owner needs to have with their students or amongst themselves. And as far as combat jiu-jitsu goes, Dave Kama hasn't quite resolved it yet. For him, it's just a matter of, can you check all the boxes? If you can check the boxes, then you are that, right? So, but for my thinking is, and a lot of it is in the mind here, it's just be happy and grateful for the life that you're given, and don't try to, or don't be disappointed if you cannot be what you want to be, which is something that it's very difficult to be, like extreme, like physical, almost on the borderline of physical impossibility. So that's kind of an update on the whole belt thing. So if you guys have any questions, comments, and I know you will, because these are very, very hot button topics, and you know me, I don't shy away from it. So anyway, comment, contribute below. Take care. Happy training. Bye now.